Hello and welcome to the Robots and Pencils Academy. I'm your host, Jonathan Rasmussen. Something that plays a big role in iOS development, especially if you're talking to backend servers, is JSON. It would be nice sometimes to be able to write unit tests that can extract and parse JSON from a file locally, just to see if we have everything working correctly in our project. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to take JSON, store it in a unit test file, and then read it and be able to use it for testing. So let's start with a blank, brand new project. I'm going to make this a single view application. Let's call this JSON unit tests. And make sure when you're here that we have include unit test selected as this option down here at the bottom. Let's go ahead and click next. Go ahead and save that wherever we like. And let's start by just going down and taking a look in our unit tests here. You can see by default, JSON unit test was created for us when we started the project. In there we have one unit test, which should be set up to fail, just to test that everything's hooked up okay. Let's go ahead and, holding down the mouse key, click run here, so that this dialog pops up, and then I'm going to click test. This is just going to run my tests and tell me whether or not everything is hooked up. So here's the output I get. Your output may come down at the bottom. This is just the way I have my window styled right now. But if I click on this red link here, it should take me to the test that was failing. And as I can see here, unit test not implemented yet. Okay, good, we're set up all right. This is a failing unit test that comes with us out of the box. We're going to build off of this and just work from here. Now, just because I don't like working in my console window, I'm going to go Command T and open a new tab. And then I'm going to go Shift Command O just to open quickly a new file here. And I'm just going to open up my JSON unit test in its own tab here. And then I'm just going to work from here. Now let's start by creating our own JSON test file. Let's go down into our unit tests here. I'm going to create a new group just by right-clicking on this folder here. I'm going to go New Group. I'm going to call this JSON. And this is going to be where I'm going to put my JSON test data. So I'm just going to click here again. I'm going to right-click and go New File. And to create my test file, I'm going to go down to Other, click Empty, Next. And then I'm going to give this the name of test.json. And I'm okay with that target, JSON unit tests. I'll click Create. And here I can just put the JSON that I'd like to read from my unit test. In this case, I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm just going to have two pieces of information, an ID and a state. This might be something that I would have received after talking to a backend server and gotten back the result of HTTP GET, for instance. This is the JSON that would have come back. And I'm just capturing it here because this is something I want to be able to read and test against in my unit tests. Now I'd like to keep this file open, so I'm just going to open up a new tab with Command T and then Shift Command O, and I'll bring up my JSON unit tests again. And now let's start working with this test file and see what a test might look like. I'm going to replace this test with one that looks like this. I've just called it test reading JSON from text file. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to create a test helper class, which, given the name of our test file, just test, it's going to extract the data from that as JSON and return that to me in the form of an array. I'm then just going to print out the contents of that array to see if it's working. But then down here, I'm going to make an assertion. I'm going to count the number of elements in my array. And here I'm asserting that there's going to be one element. There should really be two, but I'm just asserting there's one here just to make sure my test fails before I make it pass. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to, again, open up another tab here with Command T. And now I'm just going to go over to my JSON unit tests here and add a file. This time it's going to be just a regular Objective-C class of type NSObject. I'm going to call this test helper. And I like that it's for that target, my unit tests, yes. I'm just going to create that. And it's in here now that we will do the work of actually extracting that code from JSON and returning it as an array. So first I'll add the implementation method. I'll flip up to my .h file. And here we'll just put the static method data from JSON file name of type string. This is going to be our file name that we're going to pass in. And we're just going to return an ID. But it's really going to be an NS array when we're finished with it. Let's go back to our implementation. And I'm just going to plunk this code down and then walk through it. Let's just take a look at what this is going to do. So what we're saying is we're going to pass in a file name for the test file we're looking at. In our case, our test file is called test.json. We're just passing in test, and then we're appending or looking for an object of type JSON here. So if you're wondering why we're just passing in test and not test.json, that's why. But really, the really interesting bit is these two lines here. What's happening here is everything in our Xcode project is bundled up in what's called an NS bundle. And we want the specific bundle that has our test class, this test.json file in it. So to get the correct bundle, we pass ourself the name of a class that we're coming from, self.class, in this case test helper. We get the bundle for that class, and that's how we get our correct bundle. This is a big deal because if we did the main default bundle, we would get the bundle for our project up here, which isn't what we want. We want it for our test classes, so that's why this line here is key, self.class bundle for class. Then with the bundle, we're able to get the resource of type JSON for that file name. So we're saying, hey, in that bundle, can you just find me a file name of test of type JSON? And if you do, can you return that to me as a resource? We're then going to take that resource, create an input stream from that path, open it up, and then use the iOS NSJSON serialization static method to return that as an array, or in this case, we're passing back an ID. But that's all that's really going on here. We're getting the bundle, the resource of a type, input stream, and returning an array. So if we go back to our test now, and we look at this, it's still complaining here because we need to import our test helper class. So let's go ahead and do that. And with that imported, we should be good to go. Here we're going to call our helper, passing in our test file, print the output, and then make an assertion. Let's run this and see what happens. You can either come up here and hold down the run key and go to test, or you can just go Command U as the shortcut key. Okay, so we ran the test here. We can see our output. There we go. It read the file okay. And here it's printing out the contents of our array, an ID of 1, the state of entered. And if we go look at this test file, I'm just going to get rid of the debug window there. To get rid of the debug window, I went Shift Command Y to make that appear and go away. So if that's obscure in your view, just go Shift Command Y, and that should disappear for you. If we go look at our test file now, we can see we failed because we set our array count as 1, when in fact we know it's 2, so it's safe for us to change this to 2 now. And if we run this again, we should see our tests pass. And sometimes I find the output doesn't always come up the very first time. I have to run it once or twice to see the output I like. But in this case, I had to run it 3 times before my output came up okay. This is just one of those annoying things sometimes with unit tests in iOS. You just have to run them repeatedly. They are a bit, not completely there, but there we go. That's good. We can also check our output by clicking on this button here, this tab here. Check our JSON output, and there we have it. Okay, so that's one way to read JSON data from a test file into a unit test. And then from here, you can make all sorts of assertions. You can pass these to parsing routines, which take the JSON, transform those into model objects, assert that your model objects have the correct data. It's just a really handy technique for helping add some unit tests and a little bit more robustness to your iOS applications. Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you found that useful. Stay tuned, and we'll see you again next week. Great. Take care. Bye-bye.